Hi, welcome to another midweek 5-minute focus. I want to take a couple minutes to talk to you about a passage that I came across recently. I know normally we kind of have our favorite verses as we become Christians and we read through the Bible and we hear different Bible studies. We get familiar with some of the more common verses and sometimes even memorize them. Today is a little different. I came across a passage when I was just reading my devotions, and it's not a common passage. It's not a common verse at all. In fact, I would be shocked if any of you have memorized this verse. And so I want to read to you from Leviticus chapter 14, a couple more verses just to give it some context. But Leviticus 14:34, starting in 33. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "When you enter the land of Canaan, which I am giving you as your possession, and I put a spreading mold in a house in that land, the owner of the house must go and tell the priest." And the passage kind of goes on from there to talk a little bit about what to do, but why would I choose a verse like that? Like, that is just a strange verse to be using as a midweek 5-minute focus verse. Two things stood out to me when I read this verse. I know my mind just kind of went out into left field when I read this, but I want to share some of those thoughts. The first thing that came to my mind was this mold. Wow, we're talking about mold. We're talking about a group of people, the Israelites, who had just been in slavery for 400 years. Moses goes to Pharaoh and they do the whole 10 plagues thing. They went through all of that and they ended up getting chased out of Egypt by the army and going through the Red Sea after it had been parted, and like huge things. Mold just doesn't seem to be a very big deal when you think about what these people have just been through. Same thing in our lives. Right now we're dealing with some big stuff. We're dealing with this illness, this pandemic. COVID is a big deal in our lives right now, and the restrictions because of it. And there's all kinds of other things. Even as I speak today in this recording this video, there's people that have come here this morning from Saskatoon disaster, and they're a cleanup crew to come clean up in the church because a water line broke and hundreds and hundreds of gallons of water have flooded in the basement of the church again. And it's big stuff that happens in our lives, and somehow mold just doesn't seem to make the top of the list sometimes. And yet here we read this passage, and I guess what comes to my mind is that for God, it doesn't matter if it's a major problem or if it's a small problem. He cares. He cares about the big stuff and he cares about the little stuff. And that's worth remembering. And I want you guys to remember that. The second thing I want you to notice is in the wording, the detail of the wording in this passage. It says here, "When you enter the land of Canaan, which I am giving you as your possession, and I put a spreading mold in a house." God is speaking, and he's saying that he put the mold in the house. This is what you're supposed to do. What does that do to our minds? What does that do to our trust in God, our faith in him, to know that he's the one that put that problem, that difficulty in their lives? What do we do with that? Because this particular passage isn't even isolated in the Bible. I found this same kind of wording in Exodus 4:21 and Job 1:8 and Matthew 4:21 or 4 verse 1, sorry. And so God is saying that there are times when he does this. He will bring difficulties into our lives. The Bible does not teach us that as soon as something bad comes along, God quickly comes in to take that away. Now, it's good for us to go to God and to ask him to help us and to maybe take these things away. That's a healthy thing for us to do. But we also need to remember that God is a good God. God is a holy God. God's ways are so much higher than ours. His thoughts are so much higher than ours. God can use difficult things in our lives for good. And although it can seem like a really difficult thing, especially when you're right in the middle of it, to go through tough stuff, bad things, it doesn't seem like a good thing. It doesn't even seem like God could have brought this into our lives. And yet I want to turn to a passage in James chapter 1, verse 2, and remind us that it says, as tough as this is sometimes, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Wow, that's a big deal in our lives. That's a big challenge, but it's a good challenge. So the next time you find mold in your life, I want you to just remember, go running to God with it. Doesn't matter if it's a big thing or if it's a small thing, go running to God with it, because God specializes in this sort of stuff. He knows more than we would think about this kind of stuff, and He cares. He deeply cares. So go running to God with this kind of stuff. It's important.